This week, we're looking at the process of decolonization. And so, what we're looking at is the process of Europe letting go of all their colonies around the globe. And so, after World War II, we're going to see most parts of Africa and Asia and the Pacific gain their independence from European rule. So, we're going to start with India. India was one of the first nations to gain their independence after World War II, and partially because a lot of the groundwork had been laid during that interwar period. Works by Gandhi and other nonviolent protests helped kind of lay the foundation for independence after World War II. Plus, after World War II, not only was there growing resistance to British rule in India, but it was also becoming too expensive for Britain to keep control of India. In order to maintain control there, they had to keep a government presence there. They had to keep a military presence there. And so, especially after just fighting in the war, it didn't make sense to continue to maintain control of India. So they were finally willing to relinquish control after the war. One of the big issues, though, with independence in India was the large Muslim population. About a fourth of the population of India were Muslims, and the majority of the rest were Hindu. Well, the Muslims feared that an independent India would lead to dominance by the Hindu majority. And so the Muslim League was created, and they start to push for a separate Muslim state to be created. And they're going to lead protests and riots, including the Day of Direct Action in 1946, where they began to spread riots throughout India, pushing for a separate Muslim state. And ultimately, they're going to get what they wanted. When India is granted independence, it's going to be divided into two and technically three separate states. It's going to be divided between a Hindu-dominated India and a separate state of Pakistan, which would be dominated by the Muslims. And also you have the creation of Bangladesh as well. And with this division of India, it led to these mass migrations. Tens of millions of people migrated. You had Hindus migrating from Pakistan back to India. You had Muslims migrating from India to Pakistan. And during these migrations, violence breaks out and entire villages were destroyed. And as many as 1 million people died during these migrations that followed the division of India. Gandhi would also be assassinated shortly after independence by a Hindu extremist. So once gaining independence, India has been able to maintain a stable democracy. And their first prime minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, is going to lead a program to help push for economic development and industrialization. He supported civil rights. He was also a strong supporter of Indian democracy. And he had himself been a disciple of Gandhi. And so he's also going to favor this policy of non-alignment, because again, we're in the midst of the Cold War now, and he wanted India to try to stay out of it as much as possible. So he favored this third path of not aligning with the Soviet Union or the United States. Following Nehru, his daughter is actually going to take control of India. And Nehru's daughter, Indira Gandhi, becomes the prime minister, and she serves two separate reigns as prime minister. She serves from 1966 to 1977, and then she also serves again in 1980 to 1984. She becomes the first female prime minister of India. And she had some controversial policies during her time as prime minister. She too was a big supporter of trying to push India towards more economic growth, but in the process, she also limited a lot of personal freedoms. She also tried to curb India's dramatic population growth through some very controversial sterilization and birth control practices. For example, as many as 8 million people were forced to undergo sterilizations in 1976 and 1977. She also began to alienate some of the religious minorities in India, especially the Sikhs, followers of Sikhism. And so she would be voted out of office in 1977, but she wins re-election and comes back to power in 1980. And when she comes back into power, she faced a lot of opposition from groups like the Sikhs. And the Sikhs wanted to create their own separate state as well. They were wanting to break free from India control. And an uprising breaks out, and she responds to this uprising with severe violence and destroys several major Sikh temples and religious centers as well. And she would actually be assassinated by two of her own bodyguards who were Sikhs. Following her assassination, her son is going to take control, and he would be elected in 1985, but he would actually be assassinated by a terrorist group called the Tamil Tigers. Despite this assassination, India has been able to maintain a stable democracy since gaining independence. In fact, today they are the world's largest democracy. The Green Revolution. We're going to talk more about the Green Revolution in a couple of weeks, but it's a series of developments that are going to lead to dramatic increases in agriculture production. It includes new seed variations, new fertilizers, new irrigation methods. And as a result of the Green Revolution, India and many other parts of the country are able to produce enough food to feed themselves. However, the Green Revolution also has some drawbacks, especially when it comes to the environment, as many forests are cleared out to make room for new farmlands, and then also the impact that a lot of these fertilizers have on the environment. When we look at Pakistan after gaining independence, their government is going to come under the strong control of the military, and they're also going to have trouble controlling the outlying parts of their territory as well. A lot of tribal groups kind of gain influence in these mountainous regions. They also are going to come under the increasing control of Islamic fundamentalists who want to try to return Pakistan back to a strong Islamic state and get away from some of the more secularized laws.